Time now for Perspective, and today we're taking a look at the place of art in Paris today. No longer internationally recognised as perhaps the vibrant cradle of creativeness it once was, but our guest says that doesn't mean artistic community is dead. Will Mountain Cox has compiled a book of 22 interviews with artists, all linked to the French capital, and also looking at the role of cities and community when it comes to artistic development. Welcome to the show. Firstly, can I start by asking you exactly the reason that prompted you to put these interviews, this book together?
I had a few reasons for putting it together. I guess first just comes from making art here and getting to know the community here, and then actually having left it and seeing what the response to or the belief in the community is now around the world. And a lot of people would ask me, what is still going on in Paris? Does anything still happen here? And I had seen that through my work here, but I was finding myself frustrated that that wasn't being appreciated, let's say, anymore around the world. So kind of just set out to do something about it, to show off beautiful artists who make really interesting work and give them the light that they deserve.
Indeed, to prove that that creative hub still exists. Now, you've put together 22 different interviews and very different forms of art, writers, painters, chefs. Explain the logic to that selection.
I mean, there's just a lot of people who make art that I appreciate. When I really set out to figure out how to write this book, I was looking at the different ways that nonfiction can exist now, and I'm finding myself inspired more by YouTube and by podcast culture and the way that they present multiple narratives, multiple voices, different opinions. I thought was a really beautiful way to think about nonfiction literature. I think right now we're kind of consumed by memoir, and that's a very individualist type of storytelling, and I appreciate a lot of it. There's a lot of innovative stuff, but I wanted to look at these new mediums of nonfiction to give multiple voices to one single issue or one single idea.
Indeed, and what is the most surprising that struck you as you started to research it and find it?
When I went out, I went looking for answers to debates that we currently have in bars with our friends. But one of the things that came up a lot was mental health. And I don't mean particularly mental health in the exact medical sense, but maybe mental wellness or mental well-being. And so I spoke a lot to people about that, about what aspects of their life affect them in certain ways, and how that then inspires their art, and how hopefully their art then inspires people to have a new outlook.
Indeed, and I guess art has always been that emotion, that raw emotion on the page. That's what we all relate to. And there is then the question of social media and how that is also impacting all of our mental health. But you've also studied urban politics, and you question the role cities have on art. And I find that quite interesting, because on the one hand, the closer we are in communities, the more debate we have, and that's surely a generative source.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the city life is very interesting. I'm an American living here for a while, and most Americans who come here have a cliche idea of the Paris art community, which is a very beautiful one. And you see those. There's different aspects of those in London and New York and San Francisco throughout history. Every city throughout history. But to me, it's looking at what makes a community function. So the affordability of even having a good rent and being able to eat well and go out and socialize and move through the city based on transportation, and then there's obviously the question of cultural support. France is very good for that. So no, I in some of the interviews I really tried to look at what people are doing to create community around their artwork. And
do you think there's a danger if cities, outprice the artist? I mean, creativity surely can be found just as easy in the countryside, or do you need that vibrancy of the city?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, if you look at a lot of the most successful art communities, they were always in cheaper places, but that's the history of the city. The city used to be a very cheap place up until the 80s. And so now it's interesting. I think you'll see one aspect or one set of people moving to new, cheaper cities all the time. But I also think in our current state of technology and how we gain attention for ourselves and the hustle to make a name for ourselves, it's hard to do that outside major cities. There's still some aspect of the internet being tethered to the earth, and that happens in the biggest cities where the attention, where the news channels are, where the magazines writing about artists are, and so it's hard. I think you're going to see a big change in how artists have to make their life within big cities that they still find themselves needing to live through.
Indeed, and also needing to take the breaks from, as we can all understand, living here in Paris. Well, unfortunately, we're already out of time, but thanks so much for coming in and giving us a flavour of the community you would like to create through your book. It's called With Paris in Mind. Mr. Will Mountain Cox, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.